Marnie Glickman. How are you, Marnie?
I'm terrific. I'm really excited to talk to Michael Ihle today.
Hey there.
Joining us from, Mike, whenever they refer to Dallas, they always refer to Dallas as the Metroplex. Is that a real, where are you in Dallas? Are you in the Metroplex? What does the Metroplex even mean?
Yes, indeed. So Metroplex is actually kind of everything from the Fort Worth side to the Dallas side. And then sort of everything in between is kind of where do you live? So I'm basically just north of the airport, kind of halfway in between. So if I try to go to Dallas, it's going to be 35 minutes. If I go to Fort Worth, it's going to be 35 minutes. And one of the things you have to do down here is you kind of have to decide which one do you fall to. So it's like a football game. You fall to the Dallas side or you fall to the Fort Worth side. And there is a difference between, the two. I will say that.
Well, I'm going to follow up because my stepkids live in Dallas or somewhere in the Metroplex. What is the difference between Dallas and Fort Worth?
So it's called Dallas a bit more cosmopolitan because things are newer. They don't have the stockyards. They don't have all the cattle running through downtown, for example. And Fort Worth kind of tends to be a little bit more laid back. So whereas Dallas is a bit more Cosmo, need to be seen, great restaurants. Fort Worth has great restaurants as well, but again, it's just a little bit more laid back than Dallas.
Okay, Michael, are there really cattle running through downtown Fort Worth?
Oh yeah, the stockyards itself every day. Actually, I think twice a day. It's a blast to go there. I mean, great restaurants right next around it. Okay. There's dancing. There's the honky tonk that I don't go to. But there's a dance place that's just nearby there as well. And they do the stock show rodeo every year as well. So yeah, it's a great place to go and just kind of hang out and see people.
Why don't you go to honky tonks?
Well, it's just by its nature, when you say honky tonk, it just sort of doesn't seem like a place that I need to go. Plus then the whole concept of line dancing. And then, I do own a couple pair of cowboy boots and I have a couple hats. I mean, you have to, Dallas, but at the same time, it's just, I'm a country music guy, but I don't necessarily have to go to the old type of, line dancing thing.
Okay.
So obviously we're 30 plus years out of high school. We don't expect you to pick up every single step along the way, but especially for those of you who have ended up far away from Hopkins High School, how did you get from high school graduation to the Dallas Metroplex?
Wow. So I pretty much, first off, I've been in the airline industry the entire time, or really the travel space for the entire time. And so I started off at Northwest in the airlines there. And then there's another airline, US Airways, which was based in DC. And I happened to get a good job that moved me there. So I was in DC for a number of years. And then I got another job that took me up to New York City and that surrounding area. Did that for a number of years and did a bunch of M&A work that was buying other companies and putting them all together for a while. One of which was bringing a bunch of companies back to Denver, which of course was a highlight for me. And then guess what? I got to move to Denver and was there for like 7 years. And then unfortunately, I left Denver about, I think, 14 years ago and moved down here for another job. And really that's what kind of brought me to each location. But at the same time, I'd say I'd never planned to live in Dallas. Every time I came down here, it was always hot. And guess what? It's still hot. But, it's an easy place to live. But, truthfully, my heart's still back in Minnesota. My heart's in Denver. At some point in time when I retire, it's probably one of the two places I'll end up.
Yeah, that's a good sampling of sort of the major metro areas of the country. What was your least favorite?
Least favorite? Wow. I mean, I think they all had good qualities. I didn't like the traffic in DC. I mean, it would take us an hour and 15 minutes to get in from like 10 miles. And that was just like a pain in the, what? I mean, I love New York. I mean, I lived out in Parsippany and yet commuted into the city. And that was fantastic. I mean, I didn't actually drive, but I was driven in and working in New York City was sort of always a big thing of mine. I wanted my first job to be, in the city, working in some place. I'm sure not looking out, but, it never happened. But at the same time, it was a good time while I was there, good experience. But I'd say the traffic was just sort of the bigger problems for both locations. And yet, once I left, then I was pretty much in the suburbs of Denver and the suburbs here in Dallas. So, all that went away.
You mentioned earlier that you spend some time in Canada for your job. Where do you go in Canada? How often do you make that trip? And what's your feelings about international living, if you can even consider it that?
Sure. Yeah, the company I actually work with is based in Canada, small group. We're a small company, about 70 people, and we're in airline software. And again, the majority of the people are in Toronto as well as Montreal. And so I get up there about, I'd say once a month or so, but at the same time, I usually see the other partners in some other part of the world. So we tend to meet in locations of wherever our clients or potential clients bring us. So, one day it might be Singapore, next day it's in Dubai, next night it's in Ireland. And we sort of joke that often we meet there as opposed to meeting in Toronto. But, other than the fact that I can officially say I've been deported from Canada. That's a great experience, I'll tell you. So officially, yes, I was deported. Just an issue of whether or not they thought I was working there for the wrong reasons. I'm an independent guy, but they don't want you taking jobs from Canadians, and I totally get that. We don't want to take jobs from them either. But anyway, they just decided that I was coming up a little too often and decided to send me back home, which I came up the next morning and we were fine. So,
wait a second. You're the first guest, the first classmate who has admitted to being deported. Did they come and get you and take you to the border, or did you get like an email? Like what is it like to be deported from Canada as a U.S. citizen?
Okay, so I can give the full experience. So as you come in through, you arrive, you go down through your security and immigration.
Yeah.
And of course, then I even have the fast pass to get through. So the Nexus, I had Nexus approved with my passport, and of course put it in. And it just says always see the agent. So of course that just means secondary screening, and you go to the back section that kind of the other people go to, and then you sit there and wait while they look at your passport, and then they bring you up and so why are you here? Ask you 1,000 questions, and of which they said, well, unfortunately today we're not permitting you to come in the country, and so at that point they book you another ticket going home, the first available. They then hold your passport and they say if you'd like to go out for an hour to grab a little bit of lunch, because in my case I had like 4.5 hours until my flight coming back was coming home. So they kept my passport. They escorted me out to the common area. I had an hour to go grab lunch or anything I needed. Then I could go back, and then I waited again until they escorted me to my flight. And then
back into the office. Wait a second, I'm interrupting. Back where were you? Like in a room?
You're in the secondary screening area. So you go from the secondary screening area, then they take you out, and of course then you're there with this, ATF agents, giant person, and they're walking you. And of course it's literally the mile of shame, right? Because they walk you right past all the other things that you would normally have to go through, and get re-screened to go back and through. Okay. But the whole time, everybody's looking at you like, who is this guy? Oh, wow, what did he do? Why is he leaving? Blah, blah, blah. And then, all the way out to the gate, and they issue you back onto the point you put your boarding card on, and they say, okay, you're good, thank you. And once again, then you get on board, and of course, then all the people next to you are saying, wow, so what, can I ask what happened, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting deported. And they're like, wow, so what is it? So you give them a little bit of your story, and in my case, I was honest, I'm an honest guy. And they said, wow, that's just so interesting. I said, no, not really. But anyway, the whole time I spent most of the day, honestly, trying to figure out what was going to happen, because I usually hosted most of the airlines as they came in, and most of them know me. So it was kind of a matter of now who do they actually go talk to? And, what was I going to be able to coordinate my flight for the next morning? So, it was a long day. And I left at 6 a.m. and I got back at like 9. And then I woke up the next morning at 6 and flew back up and had all my other paperwork. And so we were fine. But yeah, that, it's a hopefully once in a lifetime thing. I mean, I get into secondary once in a while anyway. I got it in Dubai as well. But sometimes they're just nothing. They just ask a few more questions because you travel a lot. I have a full passport, but that's usually the extent of it. But then in Canada, they just wanted to get a bit more questionable. That's all.
Yeah. When did you decide that, well, I should ask this, did you decide to go into the line of work that you're in, or did you decide, I really want to work in the travel industry, I want to be part of that, and then sort of figured out your way in?
Yeah, so my dad was in the industry beforehand while I was in college. And so really my last couple of years at St. Olaf, I was going up to Egan, which is the former headquarters in Northwest. And I knew a few people. I knew Doug, who's now the president of American, and a few others as well. And I kind of worked into an internship with them and had an idea that I kind of took forward around a specific way to estimate passenger movement based on schedule. And then that turned into kind of a, hey, maybe you should come work here. And next thing I know, I was, and poof, that kind of started the whole thing. And kind of once you're in, there's just so much to like about it, all the different facets of running the airline. Granted, from a management perspective, but at the same time, it's just to me, I can't really leave. I mean, there's different aspects of the other travel industry, the hotel side and the cruise and other areas that connect all those pieces, which I've also been a part of. But truly, the airlines are a love of mine, and the hotels are very close from that side.
Well, Michael, I encourage you to watch the KHOP88 episode with Kathy Cheetah, who was a retired air traffic controller.
Ah, okay.
It was pretty interesting. But anyhow, Jason, go ahead.
That is an amazing job. So I tell you.
I envy your full passport. That's just fantastic. I think that I mean, you know, a lot of my friends who travel for work will say to me, boy, the glamour of travel has just been washed away. I just really, you know, it's not something I enjoy doing at all anymore. And other people say, no, I love it. You know, I love going to different places and, you know, getting out of my comfort zone and stuff. Is going to the airport, getting on a plane, going into someplace new, is that still hold some excitement for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I kind of crave it on one side. I miss the family, obviously. And if you get like the 2-week or 3-week trip, bouncing from place to place, that can be a bit old. So I'm a guy who likes to leave and come back and be home by weekend to still be at home for, you know, what's going on. But, you know, there's nothing better than going to a place, one, that I haven't been. And if I get any extra time, which that's the downside. So when you're literally coming in, jumping right in the meeting, and then immediately leaving, jumping on the plane and going, it's not really like you've been there. And honestly, the first couple of times I went to China, that was exactly what it was for me. I literally landed, got in at midnight, and then woke up the next morning, went to the meetings, and then left the next day. And poof, you know, those are tough, because if you don't get into a pattern of how you sleep and get a good seat, you know, you're pretty much wiped on both sides. So you kind of you learn how to travel from that perspective. But when you get the time, I mean, some of the best times I've had were, you know, I took a day and went from downtown Beijing and took it up to one of the walls and did my own thing, actually got lost and got stuck. And let me tell you, when you don't know Chinese, you know, finding your way back and working your way, and when you don't have Google Translate, that wasn't the thing at the time, makes it interesting. But, you know, I made it back. But those are the ones I remember, because the people are great no matter where you go. And if you find the right people and didn't get, you know, accosted by one, or didn't get, you know, something bad, which I had in Amsterdam. But, you know, beyond that, most people are very helpful, very nice, to the point that they even bring you in and you know, cook you dinner.
That's amazing. Do you want to go into your story about Amsterdam?
Well, actually, Amsterdam was one of my first business trips I had, and it was just after what's called Queen Bee's Day, where they all take off. And mind you, this is Amsterdam, so keep in mind other things that go on. They have the red light district. They have, you know, pretty much open marijuana running around in different forms. So everybody's pretty happy, right? And so I basically left my hotel. This is the day before Queen Bee's Day, and people are still already kind of running around. And this guy just, you know, was pretty drunk. And next thing I know, he just took a swing at me, and I didn't even see it coming. Obviously, I just wasn't anticipating it. I was looking at the train station I was about to get to. And next thing you know, I'm on the floor, kind of almost knocked out. I get up and I look back, and I can still see the entrance of my hotel. And it's not like this is a nice hotel. And I look back at the guy. So I went back to the bellcat guy that was just sitting down there. I said, okay, did you just see what happened? He said, yeah, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, kind of hurt, got a headache. He's like, I'll get you something. I'm like, okay, seriously, that's all it was to you? But I mean, his friend kept on trying to pull him off of me. Again, I didn't say a word to the guy. Wasn't talking at all. It was just simply, you know, it's something he wanted to do. And so again, obviously never forget it. But, you know, it reminded me to stay on my toes, and certainly in certain places, you just need to be mindful of where you go. And that's always the case, but, you know, reasonably, I think I've been a little too on the adventurous side in general anyway, ever since. So.
That's interesting. That, you know, I always think when I go to these cities, it always enters my mind, you know, it's some sort of Jason Bourne story or something like, you know, just, you know, getting kidnapped and no one would know. No one would know, you know, friends of family would say, well, I think he was in, you know, Berlin or something. Like, other than that, you're gone. No trace, you know.
Well, I mean, think about traveling before cell phones.
Yeah.
I did it.
Oh, yeah. And it
where,
was, honestly, in the last couple of years, it's been much better because at least you've got things like, I got saved once when I was trying to get a train from one part of other China to another part, and I just needed to more or less let them know where I was trying to get to. And when you're in a more remote place where English isn't the big speaking language, then yeah, you can sort of run into some issues.
So Michael, we're going to go, so are you surprised? So you said your father was in at the same sort of industry?
He was, for a while.
But are you surprised at your career? Like if we were talking to Michael when he was 16 years old, what did you want to be in high school?
Well, see, in high school, I wanted to be a doctor. And so I even went to St. Olaf under the pre-med chem program and, you know, it's going through the phases and I'm like, chemistry is just not my thing. And then I got to organic and just said, hold on, organic, no. And you know, that was
that's
my
the filter.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, and they always talk about sort of that's the means to ensure that we can weed out who we need to, you know.
Yeah.
And yes, I was definitely weeded out, thank God. And it was really came down to economics and math type of. We didn't have a business major at St. Olaf, so I mean, you kind of make it look good. And so I had a math econ stats major, and you know, putting those together, those classes were easy. I got them; they made sense. I didn't have to memorize everything, and it was intuitive to me. And chemistry was just not. So yeah, I wanted to help people. I wanted to be part of the medical career because I thought it was a fun place to be. To help others, but then then I took the hard left and decided, okay, I didn't know where I was going to go still at St. Olaf, but really I kind of knew business was going to probably be some form of background. And then when the airline kind of bug got to me pretty early, then it took off.
That's very interesting. I have another St. Olaf question. This is an accident, Michael and Jason. Last week we had another Ole on, John Dale.
Mm-hmm.
And he told us about a bar he built in his dorm room. Did you ever see his bar?
I didn't. Knew of it. Everybody knew about it.
You knew? Well, everyone knew?
Well, I mean, everybody had, well, like my wife was from St. Olaf as well, and she was in the downstairs area of Thorson, which is a dorm that's kind of out in the back, and she happened to have this quad down below that had a full kitchen and everything, and they basically bring the large beverage items in through the back and have some parties because their door was out to the back and they could get it through. And we were a dry campus, so of course we didn't drink.
We heard that.
Yeah, we don't drink, but you know, we get inventive on ways of ensuring that, you know, that can be taken care of.
That's good to know. Thank you.
I love the reputation of this keg. So we haven't touched too much on Hopkins High School, which is totally fine. But one thing we like to ask everybody is if they had a teacher growing up in school, it doesn't have to be high school level necessarily, who you still think about, who sort of sticks with you. Maybe you had a special impact on your life.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's probably two. And one for the life of me, I was trying to remember beforehand, but she was the accounting teacher. She was a smoker, that's what I remember, because she always constantly wanted to smoke. But she was.
Wait, how did you know that?
How did I know she smoked?
No, how did you know she wanted to? She'd say like, "Hey kids, I really want to be smoking and not teaching." Well,
no. Basically, she'd have her cigarette pretty much on her desk, and she'd have to take breaks every so often, and then she'd come back and you could just smell her. And so, you know, the accounting courses weren't exactly the hardest courses in the world, but, you know, she was a great teacher. Don't get me wrong. I mean, she was a great teacher. She kind of knew how to handle each person and give them what they needed. She was a great guide for me in not just what we were learning, but how it was connected to everything else that was going on. So and my wife's an accountant, for example. I give her a hard time because, you know, I just counting numbers. I joke all the time. But really, it's still how do you connect the dots and keep things regulated. And so she was one at high school that kind of had an impression on me. I think was bringing me back towards the whole business side of life was one. And then my other one was really the chief stats prof at St. Olaf. He was a funny guy that had his beard, and I won't kind of describe, well, he occasionally would find various food items in his beard. And so when he went to class, he was kind of an interesting guy. It was just sort of, oh, hey, but a funny guy. And again, he too was all about getting data and finding out things and inferring things from data. And so he had the biggest impact for me because frankly, I continue using that approach, that philosophy in building new innovation, building new software for different industries and driving it to the data that it gives you. And sort of what can you learn from that without actually having to talk to people, the implicit learning side. And so I even went back several years after graduating and helped him and some of his classes with real data. Because again, I was in the airline side, we had a decent amount of data and worked it through since I was kind of coordinating with him to get into my internship there. I was trying to do essentially paying it back by giving them additional data and giving the team or the class a specific activity to kind of work on. And they did a great job. So I've always maintained with him, and whenever he's had a specific candidate, graduates who were looking for certain type of things, just somebody to talk to, I always did. And it was just a blast because they always were top-notch people.
Cool.
It always strikes me whenever I talk to anyone from our, era of being in high school who has gone into a profession that is really involved in, computers, even at the programming level, statistics level, because computers were just not really something that we dealt with that much on a day-to-day basis in high school. Yeah. You had access to some apples in the, in a lab or something like that, right? But I mean, I even remember going to college. It was, a kid would be like, should I have a computer in my dorm room? And they like actively dissuaded you from doing that. They're like, you'd be a target for theft. Like, there are plenty of labs on campus. Don't worry about bringing your own computer. Yet we seem to have adapted just fine, right?
Exactly.
The technical realities of the world. Do you ever think about, I feel like Generation X's journey through technology is sort of, no one will ever experience the world the way we did because we went literally from rotary phones, to super high tech things. Do you think about that much?
I joke that we went from analog to digital, and then, really everybody went from digital to high def, right? And now it's just Internet of Things. So, really, and I sort of joke because, one of my loves is home automation. And I kind of adopted home automation long before it was really anything of putting in a light switch that you could control with your computer or otherwise, to the dismay of my family, because of course I can do things all to the house and whether they like it or not, and it's fun. But it's sort of, that's where things are going, and kind of knowing how that can impact things, and just the smallest thing that still captures a ton of data and can provide it to other systems which can interpret it and go from there is still the fun that keeps me going. So I think we're still in for a big technical change, especially with things that are going into blockchain today. And so from the whole blockchain world, and you keep hearing cryptocurrency, I'm deep into that. Love it to pieces, and I think frankly, leveraging the blockchain going forward is going to be a pretty big deal for security for anybody.
Michael, you've
touched on Marnie's favorite topic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, good.
Okay, so I have learned from a couple classmates who are also interested in cryptocurrency. And I might have missed the blockchain stuff. What is the blockchain?
What's the blockchain? Well, I guess the easiest way to describe it is that it is a long algorithm that essentially can prove through its different means of connecting, chains on chains, of validating or invalidating whether something is real or unreal. And so at the same time, things you can build on it are ways of knowing that, say a financial transaction's taken place, yes, who sent it to who. And we call a lot about sort of distributed finance right now, of ways of saying, how do we take what is today's world of requiring various different transfers and validations of transfers and people and banks, frankly, that have to verify these things. And why can't you just have people pay each other? I mean, kind of very similar to how we have to, like Venmo and things like that today, Zelle, if you've heard those. They're very similar. And yet now it can be done without any sort of technology behind the scenes. And these can be large scale transactions that go back and forth that don't require, you know, all of this in between to get it done. So, you know, the basis started as, you know, distributed finance in different ways of non-country-based currency. But now what we're seeing, if you sort of go out there, you'll find that, you know, artists right now, music artists, are finding ways of how can I distribute my music directly to the consumer that wants to buy it. And if you realize kind of how little gets to the artist after they're all done with all those different chains all in between, they're getting less than 20%. And yet, you know, if that number could be even 50%, fantastic. But yet they didn't have the means to necessarily distribute it all the way to them. And yet if they build on blockchain, they can. And so there's now new technologies that are essentially attaching to blockchain that verify all the different, who can actually have access to the content, how they actually get paid for the content, and at what rate or what unit that they actually get paid against.
Okay, I just have one follow-up question, Jason. So are blockchains related to all currencies or just the cryptocurrencies?
Well, I mean, blockchain itself doesn't necessarily mean it has to be tied to a currency per se. Okay. I mean, and there's many, everybody here is kind of Bitcoin and Ethereum is two, you know, the two biggest that are out there. Ethereum, but frankly, there are several others. In fact, my favorite's Polkadot and
Your favorite one's Polkadot?
My favorite one's Polkadot, yeah.
Okay.
And it's partly because of how they started, and they based on other algorithms that are out there, but they were trying to basically say, well, if Bitcoin and Ethereum wanted to get together, or if two other disparate systems wanted to connect, how would that happen? And they essentially built a network that verified those pieces. So again, lots of coding, lots of technology built into it, but it's all really, its foundation is meant to be around being secure, and I guess to some degree to being private enough, right? I mean, where you hear things in the marketplace today around the fact that it's all, you know, washing money and doing all these things, I'm sure, yes, those things do probably happen. I mean, I've watched enough Netflix shows that there's got to be some form of bad things going on just because of its anonymity. But what we're also seeing is some of those things the anonymity side is being removed in some cases, still with the privacy, but you still prove that you're actually doing things within the blockchain itself.
That is really interesting. I just want to stop and pause because Ramon Arena has been trying to come see the show, and I just sent him the Zoom link. So if he shows up on the Zoom, is it okay if I let him in?
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Did you have a relation? Okay, yeah. So thank you for that information.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Turning to a completely other lighter side. The other question we like to ask everyone is if you picked up any hobbies during the pandemic that, although it seems like uniquely among a lot of people, you have not worked from home, you jetting all over the world. But did you pick up anything new during the pandemic that you weren't doing before?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's weird to think that for the most part, I wasn't on a plane for almost a year and a half after being on them pretty much every week. And yet I do work from home. So when I'm not actually on the road, I'm actually here, which is kind of nice. But I'd say the biggest thing I've done is I sort of dabbled into this thing called 3D printing. And next thing I know, it was, you know, kind of fun little builds. And then next thing I know, I'm learning how to design in CAD. And then now it's sort of an addiction that pretty much anytime I need to build something, I design it and build it. And then, you know, now I got 4 printers and you know,
wow.
It's kind of fun. It is fun.
That's really okay. So, did you ever mess around with woodworking or any other sort of, you know, building things before 3D printing came along?
I did. Yeah, I actually started building furniture right out of college because it was just too expensive for me to pay room and board pricing. That the store at one point in time in Southdale. Sure. And so I just started kind of going down and building my own things. I've done the same for a while as well. Building things out of walnut wood and kind of putting epoxy together, because that's kind of the latest thing as well. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, so the design side has always been a part of what I love, and it kind of lights a bulb. And it's also just very different than what I do for work. So it kind of allows me to just release and kind of do whatever I think outside the box, do stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with work whatsoever, and ultimately see the output of it when you're done. So I think that's what I like about it.
What's the biggest or most complicated project that you've done so far on the 3D printer side?
On the 3D printer side, well, I guess I'd probably say there's two things. One of which was I kind of combined LED lighting with 3D printing to make this AKO sign for my daughter, who's an AKO at the University of Michigan. That was kind of fun, but Halloween's here, and of course you can just build anything for Halloween. And so I built these lanterns that had these little firelights in them, put them on stakes, and they had speakers in them. So I've got them lining the front yard. And so as people come up the driveway, it recognizes that there's motion, and then it starts playing a spooky theme. And then the lights are always on, of course. So yeah, it's getting more and more complicated. I mean, they take a long time to print. So the funny part is people think that these things just pretty much just form on this table in a matter of an hour. And some of these prints were taking 25, 30 hours to print, and you hope that they are successful. They don't always get that way. Right. And of course, they always die at like the 24th hour as opposed to the 4th hour. Nice, but yeah. So I mean, I printed a whole bunch of them. I think it was 2 weeks. That's all I was doing, is just printing these things or getting them going at least.
Are people hitting you up for it? Or they want the version for themselves?
Once people knew that I had a 3D printer and I could design, then I got a whole bunch of people coming by to say, hey, could you print this or could you do this? And like, we have these things called mums down here in Texas. So when we have football, which is just gigantic in high school, tailgating the whole 9 yards. Well, at homecoming, they build these mums that are literally, 4 feet, 2 feet wide by 2 feet. They weigh 40 pounds and they've got to be decorated all over the place. Cost like $1,000. They're just insane. But so one of my friend's daughter has a football player that she's dating, and of course, so she wanted this football helmet, and she came over here, hey, can you make this helmet this color, blah 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 blah. So of course we worked on it and got it done, and fun to see. But yes, once people kind of realize what you do on that side and what then they may want built, then they always ask, could we do this and could we do this, like cookie cutters and things like that. And sure, yeah, we can put them out for you.
That's
fantastic.
So interesting.
Yeah, that's a cool hobby. I'm sure we haven't talked to anyone who's done that yet, but yeah, I'm aware that this is a thing. There's a maker space near my house, which I'm very interested in perhaps joining, just to use the woodworking tools, because I'm not going to buy these big table saws and stuff like that. I live in a house where I don't have a garage, so I can't do that stuff here. But yeah, that's the 3D printing side of stuff is really fascinating to me too. But I literally would not know where to start, and I don't have that design background at all. But it seems very cool to me.
Well, I wanted to give a shout out. So there are a few people here. Ramona's trying to figure it out. I know we're wrapping up the episode, but did you have a relationship with Ramon Reina? I mean, that sounded bad.
We dated for weeks, and then we went in a month. No, yes, yeah.
Do you have any memories of him in high school?
I mean, I do for a lot of people, but again, they all sort of blur together for the most part. So yeah, it's been a while.
That makes sense. Well, Kathy Cheetah is here, who is a retired air traffic controller. Lance Stewart, who lives in Canada, who's our guest next week. Travis Bebo is here, and Troy Finn says hello.
Okay. Hello, everybody back, of course.
Marnie, who else do we have coming up?
Oh my goodness, I was so hard at work, you guys, this morning. Let me pull it up. Hold on.
I'm very excited.
Okie dokie. So I'm scrolling through. We've had so many episodes. I need a new Google sheet. Okay, Michael, you are episode 70. Amazing. Next week we have Lance Stassel, also who goes by L. Stewart, who is our first Canadian resident. October 26th, Wendy White McDougall. November 2nd, Dan Trockman and Dean Olofsson. Dan Trockman, among other things, taught at Hopkins High School as an adult. So cool.
Oh, yeah, I think when I was young, yeah.
October 9th, the baseball team show. Eric Haugen is at work. And then December 14th, you guys, the band show is going to be big. They're like, they don't know, but they are going to show up in bigger numbers than any other sports team ever.
Very cool. Very cool.
And then I have a lot of other amazing people in the works.
Yeah, we got to try to nail down Jim Orndorff now that we know that he's out in the world.
Well, Jim Orndorff,
developing these old photos.
He politely declined today, but maybe someone else can contact him.
We're going to get Sam Siegelman on that because, you know, Jim Orndorff was part of an infamous punk band that played in the Little Theater, and Sam was the lead singer, although I'm not sure singing was what was done there.
Okay, well, thanks for the
wailing, shrieking, whatever.
Well, we are about to complete. We established KHOP88 in 2020, and we are going to going strong into 2022.
Can I just leave our viewers with one interesting thought? And I think class of 88 actually might be able to help out with this. I don't know if you guys have been following this. I just caught it today. The building that Hopkins High School is in before it was Hopkins High School was Lindbergh High School on Lindbergh Drive there in Minnetonka. And they built this huge athletic facility onto the back of Hopkins High School long after we left. And they called it the Lindbergh Center. And because of complications about Charles Lindbergh and people learning about his past as, you know, a Nazi, among other things.
A Nazi. Mm-hmm.
They're changing the name. They voted to change the name of the Lindbergh Center and Lindbergh Drive. So that's on the city side. I'm not sure what's going on there, but Hopkins High School is taking suggestions for what they should name the Lindbergh Center. I have several ideas. I think it's problematic to name anything after people anymore, but I had some people in mind. And but anyway, so for everybody out there watching, listening, if you have good ideas, maybe leave them in the chat. There's I can do some research and find out if they're taking these suggestions in an email or something like that. But.
Jason, we should post the link, and you have learned how interesting blockchains and cryptocurrencies are. I can convey changing the name is just as complicated and interesting. Indeed,
this is part of Marnie's professional past.
Okay, this is amazing. So Michael, we are closing up. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you want to share, or any shout outs to anyone who might see this in the future?
Well, so you didn't ask about my dog. So, I mean, I saw it in the past. You
usually do that.
I was going to bring my dog in. You know, when she kind of jump up.
Bring the dog.
I can't, unfortunately. He's now on the other end of the house. But no, so I have Beagles. I've always had Beagles. They are always fast, with the exception of when they get out.
How many?
Yeah, I've got 2. I almost always have 2. And they keep us busy. We'll say that much. So, yeah.
Why?
Why? Because they pretty much, well, first off, they follow their nose. And because we have some area behind our house and all sorts of things kind of run through our backyard. And so, you know, every morning what something went through, because they pretty much are beagling all throughout and making their I guess the things known of what went through. So they make a little bit of noise when they do, but yeah, they're fun dogs.
Well, that's interesting. And then Karen Koski Hintermeister will be annoyed if we don't ask you, would you mind sharing with us anything about your family?
Oh, absolutely. So I've been married now 24 years to Nancy. Again, we met at St. Olaf. I've got 2 girls. So one is, as I mentioned before, she attends the University of Michigan, her 2nd year. Last year was interesting. They more or less just sent them home, but now she's having a blast this year. Good. And then I've got a junior in high school that attends our high school here. He's on the drill team, goes to all the football games, knows football, thank God.
What high school? What high school football team?
It's South Lake Carroll. So I will say when you listen to NFL games, they'll say from South Lake Carroll, so and so's from South Lake Carroll. The guy that just left his senior year as the quarterback to go to Ohio State and has I think like 2.6 in endorsements. He's sort of the prodigy for the whole endorsements thing once the NCAA kind of did their thing. And so, he's taking advantage of it, but he's a great guy. And it's always fun to see these guys kind of, progress through. Mm-hmm. But it's a big football program year after year. And the games are fun. The tailgates are a blast. But, the football is actually pretty good football. So it's a good time.
Yeah, a lot of NFL players. The Dragons, Arnie. How cool is that for a mascot?
That's right.
The Dragons.
Wait, Jason, you know the mascot of Michael's high school football team?
It's one of the most famous high school football teams in the country. There's so many NFL players from South Lake Carroll.
That's
and the fun part about it is when you become a kindergartner, you actually become a dragon. So unlike us, we had different mascots as we went through the different, east and west and so on. Here, the entire program, everybody end to end is a dragon. So when you start your first kindergarten year, you are a dragon, and you work your way all the way up until you're a senior year and you graduate a dragon. So it's kind of fun from that side.
Well, that's a really cool idea. As a former school board member, I would think that would create some good common, relationships. Now I know this, Michael, you have shared a lot of really interesting stories. I really appreciate all of them.
Well, it's been fun. I appreciate it. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Michael. We'll see Lance Stasel, aka E.L. Stewart, or is it L? He'll tell us.
He'll tell us. Stay tuned. And then Michael and everyone, you might not know, we have a KHOP88 map of the guests. So I put your city, not your street address, on a Google map so you can see where everyone is. So L. Stewart Lance is our first Canadian resident.
Wow,
which is going to be exciting. So tune in next week, people.
And anybody coming through Dallas, look me up. I'm glad to host anybody. So
that's a generous offer, and you can't retract it because it's on the internet now.
No, and I even know where all the good beer places are, so I can bring it.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Marnie. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See you next week.
Be safe.